welcome everyone to the Relatable Podcast. My guest today is Carolyn Holden. She is currently a startup consultant for Swift Start Go. Just Start Go. I cannot talk today. I apologize. But previously, and how I got to know Carolyn is she was the founder of Home Surfing. Just did some cool things with that. Previous roles include working in startups, helping them go to market and scale. She also had some roles of helping sell a startup and worked in VC and was also a comedian. And also currently also a YouTube host for AI. So a lot of stuff going on, which is really one of the reasons why I wanted to have her on today. So welcome, Carolyn.
Thank you so much, Adam. I'm so excited to be here.
Great. Awesome. Well, I'll get us kicked off with the first question here. So what is one mistake that you have made? Kind of when you think about your success. I know you and I were talking about before about your definition of success, and you kind of questioning why I asked you to join and this call, which I think is I think is another great insight, because I feel there's a lot of people who feel that way as well, who may be told like they're successful by other people, but don't feel like they are actually successful. So
yeah, I know you're diving straight into the mistakes, and I don't want to admit fault. How dare you? You make me empty my empty my dirty laundry, lay my dirty laundry out.
Air your dirty laundry.
How dare you make me air my dirty laundry? That's so rude. Yeah, I'm gonna start by I will answer that question because it's honestly a funny answer. But I'm so excited to be here because you asked me if I wanted to be on a podcast about success, and I immediately emailed you back saying, yes, I do, but I want to talk to you about how I'm not successful. And then I was like, I apologize if this throws you off. This is every single reason why. And the reason why is just because I have a lot of feelings and thoughts about success, because I think a lot of people, like we were talking before we were recording, try to project success in like an effort to fake it till you make it, and the kind of a thing, and or like, they want to get the flashy car, they want to get, I don't know, like a crazy house, or like a fancy watch. Oh gosh, I know a guy who has a million shoes. Oh gosh, he has an entire apartment in New York City, with a bedroom dedicated to shoes. Oh my God, that guy is crazy. But a lot of the people who do that kind of stuff, especially if they're younger, tend to like be making bad financial decisions. Or they are doing the fake it till you make it thing. And so you look at them and you're like, oh my gosh, they're like so successful. And then it turns out that the guy who has tens of thousands of dollars of expensive fancy shoes actually can barely afford to pay rent every month because he's not managing his finances well, even if he has like a big salary coming in, right? So true story, by the way. I'm not going to say who it is, but if he's listening, hey man, I know you're anyways. So and then in addition to that, I, was lucky enough to go to a private high school in New York as a kid. I grew up in Connecticut, right over the border. And so I was exposed to some extreme wealth really early. And my family has had some like interesting highs and lows when it comes to finances. And so I was really excited because I love talking about success and money and whatnot. But it's not something that I normally talk about on my podcast. It's also not something I normally broadcast about myself, but like I feel like I have a weird, again, like position. So you asked me, the question was not, why is Carolyn excited about this episode? The question was, what's the biggest mistake I made? And I do have one mistake that I made that makes me so embarrassed. Awesome. And it's so funny, but it was also like very understandable because I just didn't quite understand what was going on. But my first or second career, depending on what you want to call it, whether we're counting advertising at McCann, my first career. So I guess my second career was being a comedian in New York City. And so I was a comedian for several years. I was freelance. I got a day job at a J. Crew to like pay the bills, but I was writing TV pilots and feature film scripts. I had several of those scripts placed in national competitions, which was really cool. I was performing all the time, so I got to perform at the UCB. I got to perform at the Pit, mostly in improv shows, some sketch shows, and a handful of stand-up. Looking back, I think I probably would have been really good at stand-up, but I wasn't the best at memorizing and was a bit nervous about that, so I just never really got into the stand-up game that much. But I never was able to get like a real paid job. I had all these like little mini gigs, but like no real paid job, like no TV gig or something like that. I did interview at BuzzFeed once, which is a funny story and also a mistake. And I maybe could have landed that job if I had just been more confident in the interview. That was funny. The only thing that happened there was I got I wrote a cover letter, and the cover letter was like, these are all the reasons that you don't want to hire me for BuzzFeed, because I love lists. So I did that, and then at the end I was like, no, the real reason that you want to hire me is because I'm fun. I don't remember what it was, but it was like, you don't want to hire me for all of these things that make me super qualified. You want to hire me because, I don't know, I'm passionate or something. I don't remember what it was, but it was a cute cover letter, and I went in there, and when I went to the interview, I was so nervous. I couldn't sleep the night before, and my mom got me all messed up. I should have just worn jeans and like a t-shirt, but instead I like went in like a nice dress and a blazer. It was a red blazer. I was like, it's red for BuzzFeed, but like, you know, not a BuzzFeed vibe. They were on the internet. We knew exactly what they were wearing. I just wanted to like be a little bit more dressed up, right? But I was so nervous. I shook the whole time, and I was like, and they were like, you're doing such a great job, but like, yeah, we're gonna hire someone with more experience. And I probably could have landed if I just got in there and been like, hi, I love BuzzFeed. Right. So that was a silly one. But the real mistake was I babysit for this family in Connecticut, and absolute gems. And both of the parents were producers for Conan O'Brien's show.
Oh my goodness.
And yeah, right. Okay. This is the biggest mistake. And so I loved those kids, and the parents loved me, and we would hang out, and my dad played hockey with the dad, and I would sometimes go and play hockey with the old man's league because I was a like varsity hockey player in high school. And so I would like go and play with the men in the summer and just be like, hi everybody. Like a 16-year-old. Yeah.
I hope you said it exactly like that.
I was probably more like, Kent's daughter. And so I would, and so I knew this family super well, and then they moved away to California. And so I was either still in college and studying at UCLA, or I was visiting LA for some reason. I can't remember which one it was. I think I might have been in college. It would have made more sense if I was still in college. And I had dinner with them, and we were reminiscing on all the good old days of babysitting, all that jazz. And then they asked me like, oh, what do you want to do? And I was like, oh, well, I want to work in film or TV. And I really love comedy. I think that's going to be my thing. And they're like, oh, amazing. Do you want to do late night TV? And I knew that they worked in television, but I didn't know who Conan was. And I didn't fully understand what late night was.
Yeah.
I kind of thought it was like the news, which, yes, but like I just didn't know what it was. And so I was like, oh, I don't want to do that. And so I was like, no, I really want to do narrative TV. And they're like, oh, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, like I really like narrative. Like I have all these scripts and stuff. And they're like, are you positive? And I'm like, yeah. They're like, oh man, because we don't have any opportunities for narrative, but we can like maybe help you with a late night show. I'm like, that's so sweet of you, but yeah, I just don't think that like makes sense. And if my parents had been in the room, my dad would have been like, Carolyn, you're obsessed with politics. You've been following the news since the 4th grade. You got dressed up as Sarah Palin for Halloween, senior year of high school. Yes, you want to work on late night. And so they like gave me so many openings that night. I have never seen them again. I'm so embarrassed. Also, I just haven't been to LA, but I was so embarrassed that I didn't know. They were basically offering me. I didn't really
Are you sure?
offer me an internship on Conan. thought it was the news. So that's my biggest
all
career.
right.
That's my biggest
Oh.
career mistake was I knew some of the lead producers on Conan who had known him.
Like, I don't know. Are you really sure? No, yeah, I'm gonna have to pass on that.
So when I tell kids these days all the time, when I talk to like students and stuff, I'm like,
Uh,
if you don't know what it is or you think you know what it is and you're not sure, just say yes. Just say yes.
Yeah.
Like that producer guy, that my old neighbor of mine, was like the godson of Regis Philbin, like the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire guy. Like
Yeah.
I should have just been riding on those coattails for the rest of my life. I should have them be my boss for the rest of my life. Like I babysat for them for like 8 years or something like that. So yeah, that's my biggest mistake.
Oh my god, that's an insightful one. Yeah. So I mean, I know we talked about this too a little bit before we started recording, but how did your parents influence your success, or kind of your definition of success, and what it looks like?
Yeah, great question. And I kind of hinted at that. Okay, so here's the deal with my parents because they are kind of crazy, and my dad has since passed away. But so my mom grew up from a fairly wealthy family here in Minneapolis, Minnesota. You know, she's about to turn 70, so she was like a kid in the 50s, 60s, things like that. And her dad was a lawyer and worked for like a railroad company, the Sioux Line Railroad, for any in the audience. And he had a really successful career, and he was the first generation in his family to go to college. And he went to Yale and Harvard, which was a pretty massive deal for, you know,
Definitely.
you know, somebody from Minneapolis. And so my mom ended up following in his footsteps and also went to Yale, never made it to Harvard. So he was Yale and then Harvard Law. She was just Yale undergrad. And she ended up starting the Yale's first women's soccer team and was on the first ever women's ice hockey team. And so she was featured in like Life magazine and Time magazine as like a women in sports feminist trailblazer. And so like very early on, she was like, oh, I'm going to be somebody big someday. Right. Kind of thing. And so she graduated, ended up at Cargill for about a decade. Cargill, for anybody who doesn't know, is a food company that kind of works with like farmers and grain, chicken, and then like distributes them to different other food companies like General Mills, which is also all here in Minnesota. So she traveled all over the world and had this, you know, truly corporate crazy career, and she was always paid significantly less than her male colleagues. That was because, you know, sexism in the 80s, baby. So exciting. And she ended up getting fired and for, quote, having too much blind ambition, which is crazy. And the, you know, part of it might be she's just like a very big personality. So I think she might have been annoying people a little bit. But you know, she had these massive dreams. Like her goal, she wanted to be president at Cargill. Like she knew she couldn't be the chairman, but she was like, I'm going to be president of the Cargill someday. I went to Yale. And so so like, but then, you know, she got fired and was unable to get another big corporate job again. And she was devastated. And so she had kids. She became a real estate agent. She was pretty successful, but then we ended up moving several times for my dad's career. And then she ended up helping start a company that my dad built up later. So rewinding a little bit, sorry, I know this is a lot. But this next part is a little different. So my dad's background is completely different. So his dad, my grandfather, grew up in a one-room shack with a door and a fireplace and like an outhouse in the back, like farm, super northern Minnesota, a town called Bacchus. If you've ever heard of it, they've had at their peak, they had 350 people. So tiny town. And he and almost all of his siblings ended up in education, and he ended up becoming a college professor at a bunch of universities, including Mankato, but also ended his career at St. Cloud State. Right. And so he had kind of this wild life story of going from, again, like living in a room to living in a like kind of a modern house, and
Yeah.
hobby farm and having horses like as like a grandparent, right? And then my dad, you know, grew up with his dad being a teacher, and it was kind of just expected that, you know, maybe he would also be a teacher. But my dad really wanted to be an architect. And so he went to college, wanted, and then switched schools from Mankato to the University of Minnesota, and was trying to figure out how to become an architect, realized he couldn't afford to do the grad school. I was like, I'm not sure what to do. But he was a total frat bro. And so he was in SAE. And so the building with the lions in front of it, for those of us who know the University of Minnesota. And he was surrounded by all these fancy, like waspy Edina boys who were like, oh yeah, we're all gonna work for the stock market, bro. And he's like, what's that? And they're like, oh, it's like gambling except legal. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. So he ended up starting his career with all these random odd sales jobs. Eventually, one of his ex-girlfriend's dad got him a job at some like financial firm here in Minneapolis or something, and like he really was able to start his career then, right? And so he was kind of all over the place, and then eventually he and my mom met shortly after she got fired from Cargill, and while he was kind of trying to figure out like, how am I going to scale this new career, right? So his career really didn't get going until his 30s, whereas my mom kind of like the corporate side wrapped up in her 30s, right?
Yeah.
So kind of like a weird dichotomy there. And so then he was able to get a pretty rock solid job in Chicago. We moved to the Chicago suburbs. He ended up losing his job because he ended up becoming a short seller. So betting on the stock market to go down, kind of like the guys in The Big Short. More on that later. And sorry, this is such a long answer, but I think it's interesting. I think
it's a good answer.
Yeah. So he ended up so he was a short seller, but an ethical investor. So his thesis was that any company that was breaking the law or unethical to their employees or just engaging in unethical practices in any kind of way was eventually going to fail. And so he would short them. So he would do all this like crazy detective work. My mom always says that he used to like go dumpster diving to go and find clues.
Yeah.
He was like, you know, a little like he was really in it. Okay. And then as if he would find any evidence of like wrongdoing, he would bet on the stock market as the stock to go down. But he would also, and like this is questionably ethical, but he's dead, so can't get him now. He would reach out to his reporter friends at various like newspapers and news stations, whatever, and leak information. So yeah, so I went to St. Olaf College, and he didn't, but he went to the U. But there's a very famous St. Olaf alum who's this reporter, Gretchen Morgensen, who's, gosh, she's so freaking cool. She's Pulitzer Prize winning journalist and whatever. And she's told me numerous times that my dad was the best whistleblower she ever had, and gave her some of the best stories. So some of the stories were like, if you ever watched The Wolf of Wall Street, there's a point in the movie where a Forbes article comes out. That Forbes article was by Gretchen Morgensen. It was because my dad was snooping on it. Goodness. So like, okay, so the like totally bananagrams, right? So we ended up having to like leave Chicago. Apparently there was like an issue with like the mob. I don't know what was going on, and I was very little, so we moved to Minnesota for a hot minute, and we did not have money. My parents had overspent money on this house that was like falling apart, and they were like trying to fix it up, and they were like trying to live the dream. It was like on the far end of Lake Minnetonka. It was just like, this was not a smart decision. And my mom's like, you need to get a better job. And she's like trying to restart her career over. She had this really successful real estate career in Chicago, but like Minnesota, it was just blah, right? And so eventually he spent like 2 years job hunting. And this was like kind of around, it was like right before the .com bubble too. So it was just like a weird time, but he ended up getting a big job in New York for a hedge fund there. And so we ended up moving 2 years after arriving in Minnesota. So I was in the 3rd grade, moved out there in 2000. Then 2001 hit. So that was crazy being in city suburbs and that chaos. But so he ended up having this really solid career where suddenly he was making hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And but like I mostly remembered the Minnesota stuff. And so I was like, oh, we're just like a normal family. And we were in Connecticut in a very fancy, expensive town. And so I was like, oh yeah, we're a normal family. Everybody else is wealthy. And so I just like, it didn't really occur to me that like I was kind of living a privileged life at that point, because compared to everyone else in our neighborhood, we were like not particularly impressive. And then when I was in high school, my dad and my mom decided to run their fund. So they built their own short selling fund. And they were like, the housing market's going to go down. And so at the time, and like, so I ended up switching from public school to private school for high school. And I was taking the train every day to get to school because it was just over the border. And I took the train with my dad and all of his stock market buddies. And every day we talked about the impending housing market collapse. And so like, I was like kind of aware of what was going on, but not completely aware of what was going on. And I was going to this high school with like, there were kids who were literal billionaires. And, you know, we weren't not even close. But there were literal billionaires there. And tons of these mega millionaires. And I was just kind of like, man, I'm so lucky that we can barely afford for me to go to this school. And so it was like, it was just like a thing. And then 2008 hits. And I'm in like smack dab in the middle of high school. And because all these kids, because it's the freaking suburbs of New York City, this is where all the stock market people live. Okay, these are where all the bankers live and stuff. So these are all kids of bankers. So everybody follows the stock market, and we all have laptops. So Lehman Brothers shuts down, and there are kids crying in the hallway because their parents have just lost their jobs. And so like everybody's freaking out and calling their parents on like, you know, flip phones. And I'm like, what's going on? Why is everybody freaking out? And so I like call my dad. I'm like, what's happening? Like, are we going to be okay? Like everyone's freaking out. He goes, no, Carolyn, this is a great day. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, Carolyn, this is the biggest day of my career.
Wow.
I'm like, what? So I was just like completely perplexed. And overnight, I went from like the kid who like my mom was really doing the fake it till you make it kind of stuff, right? Of like, she always wanted me to wear certain clothes and stuff to school. And I was like, why are we doing that? And then, and so, and then like suddenly it was just like everything turned upside down, and like we were wealthy. And I was like, what? This is crazy. And
how did this happen?
What?
How did this happen? What's going on?
Well, and then because in the news, and I followed the news very closely, because everybody like homes were getting foreclosed on, and like everyone was losing their jobs, and everyone's like, the economy's in shambles, and we're sitting here being like, yay! I wasn't like aware that my dad was like had spent months like trying to get the press to report on this and trying to like wait. I didn't really understand that. And so I'm sitting there being like, is my dad a bad person? Are my parents evil? And I didn't realize that they were ethical investors who were trying to do the right thing, but also like had their biggest day of their careers because they made it. And so I was just like very like mind blown about that. And then I also saw some of my friends who like their parents had been keeping up with the Joneses suddenly like having to move out of their homes, and like people whose like lives had turned upside down in the opposite direction, and like people who were angry with me about like this switcheroo that had happened. And I was just like, what? So and then because of that high school experience too, my high school peers have really warped what my perception of success is. So I'm jumping ahead a little bit. We're done with the parents. But like what ended up happening was, I really struggled to get good grades in that school. Just going from public to private was really hard, and it turns out that I had ADHD and I didn't know, because I was able to like get by in public school pretty easily. So I did not have like the same grades as everyone else. I also didn't realize that the majority of kids in my school were on Adderall, because we had like 6 to 8 hours of homework a day. And I just like couldn't physically handle it. It was crazy. It was one of those schools where like you are trained into becoming a Yaley, you are trained to become a Harvard kid, and I was just like, I'm lucky to go to St. Olaf. It's just like a different scale of things. And so a lot of my high school friends are like now big hot shots at like investment banks. I have one or two friends who were like famous on Broadway, or like classmates, not necessarily friends, right? And then one of my high school friends is like a literal pop star. I haven't talked to her in ages, but like she's a literal pop star who's like vaguely famous in certain circles. And like so like my views of success are just like totally out of whack. Because I like was in this like very unrealistic environment, doing just like okay, and like we growing up like faking it till you make it, but being like I'm not like them, and then being a point where like are we like them? But then when I think it was the Dobbs Act was passed, back to the parents, they changed the rules on how you could invest, and so you weren't allowed to like. It used to be that you could kind of do whatever, and then they changed a law for short sellers that was you can only be a short fund, or you can only invest in the stock market to go up. But they changed that law when the market was at its lowest. So my parents suddenly weren't able to invest in the stock market going up legally. And so like over the next, I think it was 5 years, they like my dad ended up having like losing almost almost the whole fund, and like had to shut it down because their biggest investors pulled out. And so we had this like enormous success for like a couple of years, and then it just like gone, and kind of like we were like still in a good spot, right? Like still very privileged and like having a lot of resources and whatever, or like good connections, but not but not having that nearly the same amount of cash, right? So my dad had a really hard time wrestling with that, because he had thought, oh my gosh, I've made so much money in one day, like I'm gonna have another big year and we're gonna do this again, and now I'm in the big leagues and whatever. Like he never made it. So like the amount that the guys in The Big Short were doing, my dad knew all of them, they all made 10 times, like 100 times as much. So he was like kind of small change in comparison to those guys, right? But same thing, like basically the same plot. The film was like what he was up to, and was like in the same circle with all those guys, right? So it was just like one of those really odd things. And then if I had been clever and was only in it for the money, I should have worked in my dad's fund before it closed. But at the time I was still like, are we the baddies?
Trying to figure that out.
And so I didn't want anything to do with my dad's company. But like having my degree from St. Olaf and nobody on the East Coast knowing what it was, I probably wouldn't have gotten a shot at working in finance unless I had decided to like work at my dad's fund for a year in college, and it shut down while I was in college. So it's like, so it's like a very bizarre spot where like I have to keep reminding myself over and over again that like I should not be aspiring to be like some of my high school classmates. Like, and also some of them are just miserable, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like a lot of them are in jobs where like they're not necessarily fulfilled. I mean, the Broadway people are very happy. I think the pop stars are pretty happy too. But like the finance people in particular, a lot of them went on the path because their parents went on the path. And so they're just doing what they thought was the right thing to do, and they're not necessarily. And so like, are they privileged? Do they have a lot of money? Yes. But are they happy? I don't know. So I think overall I've had a more interesting career than a lot of my like high school peers in particular, but I still am like sitting over here being like, I'm not
Yeah.
successful. I haven't done anything like my dad yet. I haven't done anything like
Yeah.
my friends yet. And so I'm sitting over here being like, I'm below average, even though like on the grand scheme of things, I've gotten to sell AI startups to Snowflake. I've gotten to
Yeah.
scale grocery delivery startups 10,000% year over year in the first 3 months of the pandemic. I've gotten to work in venture capital, which was a total
Yeah.
lesson after being in comedy for years. I got to be a
Yeah.
comedian in New York and like be able to like have the luxury of figuring out how to do that with like
Yeah.
a bit of a financial safety net, right? So it's like a lot of my life is like unrealistic, but also I think it like carries weird, cool lessons about success and like
Mhm.
what is realistic. And like also being able to see the other side of the curtain and be like, a lot of those people are depressed, man.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
Especially the kids of successful people, because then they're like, I'm never gonna live up to my parents, which like, yeah. So
No, I
that
get
was
it. Yeah.
entirely too much backstory. I hope you appreciated it.
No, I loved all of it. I think it's very interesting to hear you. It's just like it's I think it's a great kind of background. Uh, like you tell people understand more and learn more,
Yeah.
and just get like a really insight. And it kind of brings us into like my next question is that um, what is something that you struggle with that you think contradicts how success is defined by popular culture?
Ooh, okay. What do I think I struggle with that other people? What was the last bit again?
That's they contradict how success is defined by popular culture.
Gotcha. What do I struggle with? I mean, I think see, there's popular culture, and then there's like this weird culture that I was living in out east. And I
Yeah.
kind of view those as two different things. And so when I
Okay.
see like pop culture success, I'm kind
Mhm.
of just like roll my eyes a little bit. Like the Kardashians, I'm just like I don't really like I like okay, like you can make the argument that the Kardashians are fantastic businesswomen. And sure, Mama Kardashian,
Yeah.
like super hella smart. Like she took a sex
Yeah.
tape and turned it into billions of dollars. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So like when it comes to business,
Mhm.
I don't like doubt their business savvy, but like culturally, I'm just like, ugh, gross.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
These are gross people, like gross displays of wealth. Or if you get into
Mhm.
like the crazy billionaires like in the Bay Area, I'm kind of just like, oh, like I just don't like you guys. And so like
Yeah.
I don't really aspire to like stuff like that. And then and I feel like that's more in pop culture, or you run into like the YouTube culture, bro culture of like again the
Mhm.
Lamborghinis, like, oh, I want to get a Lambo. And I'm just like, I don't know, BMW is just fine. Like a Subaru is just fine. Like I drive a
Yeah. Yeah.
Subaru. I love my Subaru. It's great. You know,
Yeah.
I really I think there's so many different like types of cultures of success, and like the culture of
Mhm.
success that I've been a part of. Like part of it is like this extreme New York wealth, which is pretty crazy. And that's like, oh, we're gonna go to a mansion on the Hamptons, and oh now let's go to the Yellowstone Club and ski on the private mountain that we get to ski on in Montana. Right. And so like so that kind of stuff, like first of all, we never got to that point, right?
Yeah.
Not even close. But I got to like go to the house in the Hampton. I never made it to the Yellowstone Club. I already had plans, unfortunately. So that was annoying. And like just like really weird stuff.
Mhm.
I'm like oversharing like crazy over here. So I think what I struggle with is less like the pop culture and more like the peers. Like I will go on Instagram and like
Mhm.
there is one girl I went to high school with who is literally one of the biggest billionaires in the world. Literally. Uh
Yeah.
and I like look at her life sometimes and I look at the Instagram stories and I'm just like, I just get like, it's so funny because she's like the nicest sweetheart in the world. And she was a little younger than me, so I didn't know her that well. But like the last time I saw her, she like came and ran and gave me a big hug. And
Yeah.
like she's such a sweet, and that was like 10 years ago. It's been ages now. But like she's such a sweetheart. And she was I remember when she came to our high school, she was so self-conscious. She was like, I really hope people aren't going to like try to befriend me for my money. Like she was very nervous about being in a new school. And
Yeah.
it was very obvious that that was what was going on. And I was a couple years older. And so I was just really nice to her. I was just like, whatever, I don't care who your dad is.
Yeah. Wow.
We're going to be in the play together. It's going to be a great time. Let's be friends. So like I didn't,
Yeah.
so I think maybe she appreciated that. I don't know if she noticed that. Who knows? But I look at her Instagram stories now and I'm just like, oh wow. Like having that look into like her life and to know that we intersected in that point of time is like really uncomfortable for me. And like and it's so funny. My husband's like, you need to unfollow her on Instagram. And I'm like, but I really like her. She has like millions of followers on Instagram because she's rich. I'm like, should I not? And I'm like, should I not follow her for my mental health? And so like, you're like, what about the pop culture? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm dealing with my high school peers. I can't, I can't handle that. And so I have to, but then it gets weird because I'm here in Minnesota and I feel like an alien here. Because I mostly live a pretty normal life at this point, but like it is kind of like a wealthier life here. But a lot of it I don't feel like I deserve because a lot of it is like riding on the coattails of my parents and not like my own stuff. And I've always been determined to like make my own money and like make things my own way. But it like feels like I can't do that, even though the majority of money that like I do have is mine. But like, you know, it's just like there's this weird psychological part of it. And so I often get like really over self-conscious and I like don't talk about it because I always worry about it. And so now I'm oversharing probably because I'm nervous. Not that nervous, but like I don't know, talking about this stuff is weird and so I have to over explain. But yeah, so pop culture, not really. I'm still dealing with high school, man.
Okay.
That's my pop. Yeah, that's my pop culture, right?
Yeah, no, it's understandable too, especially when it's in your like. I say in your face, you see it so often, and you get reminded of it. You're like, oh, yeah, and like I feel like it might even be more stressful than in like other people because you actually know those people. It's not like
it's not like they're fictional characters. It's like it's not like, oh, that's like a funny fantasy world. It's like, no, those are my high school classmates.
Yeah, definitely. A great answer. So were there any pivot points in your life that made you change how you define success? If so, what stands out to you?
Yes. So my biggest pivot point, just in general, was pivoting from comedy to tech. Just it changed absolutely everything. And I'll tell you why. So I grew up and I already said I wasn't the best student. I really struggled transitioning from public to private school. And I moved several times as a kid. I like Chicago, Minnesota, New York, Connecticut, New York, all that stuff, right? And as part of that, I got really behind in math. And part of that was because the expectations of what you were supposed to do in math by grade in Connecticut was a year ahead of Minnesota. And so I got to Connecticut where they were like, it's time to learn division because they had covered multiplication the year before. And in Minnesota, we were supposed to cover multiplication that year. And so I was a year behind, like automatically by moving out east. And like in Minnesota, they taught cursive in second grade, and in Connecticut, they taught it in third grade, and they taught multiplication in second grade instead. It was just like a bit weird switcheroo. And so because of that, I just felt very behind, and I had very low confidence, and I didn't understand what my dad's job was, what my parents were doing, or how it worked. And when I went to my dad's office, I would look at his computer screen, which would be covered in numbers. And it turns out that it was just millions of stock prices. So it was just like, oh, here's what Disney is worth right now. Here's what Microsoft's worth right now. Here's what Goldman Sachs is worth right now. I didn't know that. I just thought there is math on my dad's screen. Therefore, my dad's job is math.
Yeah.
And it's entirely math. I didn't realize that his job was much more about psychology and the news and like
Uh-huh.
staying current with the world, right? And
Yeah.
understanding how like finance, which is like kind of math but kind of not, right, works.
Yeah.
I was just under the impression that my dad and like all business people were doing PhD level math all day long.
Yeah.
I thought that was their job. And because I thought that was their job and I was bad at math, I was like, I will never succeed in
Oh,
that
wow.
environment.
Yeah.
So I automatically opted out because I didn't quite understand what was going on. And what's funny is my parents were desperately trying to tell me, no, you are an extremely entrepreneurial child. You are very competitive.
Uh-huh.
You are fascinated by the news. You really
Yeah.
like tech companies for some reason. You may really enjoy finance,
Yeah.
where you get to monitor that and track it and learn all about it. And that's
Uh-huh.
just your job, is to learn and track it and make bets. And I was just like, no, you guys are evil people who destroyed the economy with PhD level math. And they were like, no,
Yeah.
it's literally just addition and subtraction. I'm like, no, it's not. And so like, I was just like, no. And so like, I was basically like, my only hope, my only gift is the fact that I'm vaguely funny and I'm an artist and I'm a filmmaker. And so I
Yeah.
put my entire identity into, I'm going to be on SNL one day. Turns out that's a late night show.
Yeah.
Like, right? So I put my whole identity into like, this is exactly what I'm going to be. And I am like, I want to be a showrunner one day. I want to have my own TV show. We're going to do this and blah, 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 blah. And I'm going to make it. Like, I was like, you know, if my peers are going to work in investment banking and make billions, I'm going to make millions being a TV person. So like, that was like, so I like, everything was in there. And then at some point I got really depressed because it turns out everybody in comedy is depressed. And me being around depressed people makes me depressed. I can't be around depressed people. I have to be around happy people. Otherwise I'm not happy. I just like amplify whatever is around me. And so I ended up getting super depressed. I was like, I can't do this. This is never going to happen. And we were out of money. And I was like, I'm not asking my parents for money. I'm like, we're figuring this out. Right. And so I was like, what am I going to do? And I ended up getting a job in venture capital. And I got it because this is a very long answer. I'm so sorry. This is gonna be
That's great. It's great.
okay. And so I was like, I'm desperate. I just want any job. I don't care anymore. I have no standards anymore. I will do anything. And I applied probably for over 700 jobs and hadn't gotten a single interview. And I was just like, what am I going to do? And so I started anytime I was around people, which was mostly comedy facilities, interrupting conversation if there was like a group of people, often on stage or at rehearsal, and being like, hello, excuse me, hi, I have a short announcement. My name is Carolyn Holden. I'm a comedian and I am in desperate need of a job. You are here in New York City, presumably because you can afford to live here through employment, perhaps. And if you have a job, boy, do I have an opportunity for you. You can help me get a job at wherever you work. What can I do? Well, I'm a good writer and I can film and I like can do whatever, but I'll do anything. I can work at the front desk. I can do this. I can do that. And I don't care what industry. I don't care. I just need a job now. And one of my comedy friends ended up calling me one day. It was like, can you interview tomorrow to work at the front desk of my company? I'm like, yes. What do you do? What's going on? Turns out that she was also at the front desk and she was a comedian as well and working in a venture capital firm. And she like got me the interview and it was so funny because she didn't tell me what her company was and I couldn't find it online because I didn't have a web presence or anything at the time that was like substantial. And like the night before she was like, okay, it's venture capital. Okay, so like these are the people. And I was like, venture capital, that's finance. So I like called my parents and I was like, tell me everything. What is this? And they're like, you really like it actually because you've always liked tech. It's investing like in early stage companies and it's like this and it's like that and this is everything you should know about finance, and you should make sure that they're aware that like you know things about finance because you do, even if you don't think you do because you think it's PhD level math, but you know things and You can do it. So you need to prove to them that you're not just somebody who could be at the front desk. You're somebody who could be an analyst one day. And I was like, great. And so I spent the whole night studying, and I get there the next day, and I had like sprinted that morning to like buy another dress and a blazer. Classic. Never learned from from BuzzFeed anyways. And so I get there, and my friend's like, okay, I told her I interviewed you already, so you just have to interview with my boss. Her name's Jen. I'm like, great. So I go to meet with Jen, and she's like, oh, I hear you're a comedian. I'm like, yeah. She's like, I hear you need a day job. I'm like, yeah. She's like, tell me more about that. So I told her about the comedy stuff, and she was like, great, this is why you want to work here. I think you're cool. You're like a cool kid. You should work here. We do this and that, and it's gonna be so cool, blah, 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 blah. She spent the next 45 minutes convincing me to work there. And I'm sitting there being like, wait, you're hiring me? This is the first interview I've had in years.
Oh my goodness.
I was baffled. And so then she was like, okay, it's time to meet the CEO. And I'm like, what? And so sorry, I'm going off the rails here. And I'm like, I'm meeting the CEO. She's like, yeah. I'm like, okay. And so like walk over there, and it's like, hi, this is Michael. This is Rich, like the CEO and like the CEO of the company. I'm like, hi. And I'm like, okay, this is it. I studied all night to tell them about how I know about finance and how I know about venture capital, and I'm gonna like impress them with my finance knowledge. I'm like, this is it. And like, my parents work in finance. They're like, cool. And then they're like, oh, like, we heard you're a comedian. Can you tell a joke? And I totally bombed. And as I'm like leaving the room with Jen, I overhear them say, like in the other room, they're like, oh yeah, it's probably a good thing she's getting a job here.
What?
Eventually, almost prepared. They found out I was funny later. But yeah, and so in that job, which is where everything changed. First things first, the first day was like the most amazing first day of a job I've ever had. Because and part of it was there were parties all day long. But there was like an event in the morning, and it must have been Monday Bagels. Yeah, it was Monday Bagels in the morning. And then we had a speaker event in the middle of the day with a different venture capital guy, a different VC, a different fund, who was mostly in the medical tech space. And he spent an hour explaining to me and all of the interns who had just started that day, who were like a couple years younger than me, explaining what venture capital was, why it was important, and how they were changing the world. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And I was like, oh, this has nothing to do with PhD level math. Like, I was like, oh, wait, hang on. I overnight understood investing. And then I was like sold on the company. And then everybody was so nice. And I realized that the people, we also were in an environment with all these startups in the office. And so I was meeting all these founders who were all just like comedians. They were just like artists, except they were like making money. And I was like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
You can be like, make things and make money. What? And so I was just like,
what is this?
I was like, and then at the end of the day, so we had Monday Bagels, and then we had the speaker event, and then in the evening, we had like a party, and I was just like, this is the best place I've ever worked. This is amazing. And I was like, this is incredible. So I was just like, where the hell am I? These people are awesome. How did I end up here? This is crazy town. And I was also like so proud of myself for getting there, like without my parents, which is like such an embarrassing, dumb thing to say. But then so then I was like, okay, I want to stay here. How can I stay here? So I was like, okay, how am I going to get an entry-level job in marketing? Like that's like what I'm going to do. And then I ended up talking to one of the founders who in 1 hour was like, no, Carolyn, you're entrepreneurial. You shouldn't just dream of getting an entry-level boring marketing job. You should build your own company. Like you're at the front desk. That means your job is to meet everyone. And you like are reporting directly to the C-suite. And like you are doing all this research that is like kind of analyst work in addition to like being at the front desk. And he was like, you need to dream much bigger, Carolyn. You need to just like go for it. I was like, what? And then literally at the same time, I realized that one of the founders in the office, who was like 2 years older than me, was my cousin-in-law's cousin. And he was brothers with Phil from Phil of the Future on the Disney Channel, which was like just the craziest thing. And so I'm just sitting there being like, okay, I'm somehow I knew I was like I knew that my cousin had married the cousin of Phil of the future. I like knew that, right? But I didn't know that his brother was like a startup founder. And then I got to know him. And then Phil showed up in the office a few times. And so I was like, oh my God, it's my kind of cousin, a Disney celebrity. So it's just like and I got to know like, you know, Phil the future's brother. And I was like, I'm just as smart as Phil the future's brother. I'm just as capable. He doesn't know how to code either. And I was like, wow. It was just like everything about that office, like completely changed my life forever. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And so, and it did change like what success meant because I had basically been like, now that I have failed in comedy, I was still doing comedy, but I was like, basically viewed myself as a failure because I was super depressed. And I was like, the only definition of success that I can ever have is to be a comedian and to like, be a TV show writer or maybe be a performer or something like that. Was like I did not open my mind up to the fact that there are other things that you can do with your life. And I was like, I will take anything. I'm like at the like ground zero. Like I am I have no hope left in my life. I was just like so out of it. And then to like go into this environment where like everyone was so excited to be there and like so passionate and so enthusiastic was like the biggest like electric shock that I needed in my life. And it's funny because like I didn't even fully realize how much that changed my mindset until like I left. Because even when I was there, I was still sad about not being a comedian. Like I still wasn't quite over it. But I was like, I can like do this. And so it was just like the biggest thing. And so it opened up. So like I feel like your question was leading more towards like, was there ever a moment that like changed your definition of success? And I feel like that meant like, oh, what it means to be a successful person. But like what that experience really was that like, again, there's so many different possible ways that you can live your life. And there's so many possible ways where you can like change and pivot quickly and like make your own. A thing I like to talk about a lot is like figure out how you luck. Right? How can you make your own opportunity? How can you make things happen out of nothing? And that was something I was already kind of good at doing, especially with the comedy stuff, but like couldn't figure out how to make money, right?
Yeah, it's critical piece.
And so I still haven't figured out how to make money, but I think maybe I'll get it in 2026. I think this is the year we're going to figure it out. And so, but it was just like such a big turning point and like opened my mind to the fact that like, as a creative person and as someone who doesn't know PhD level math, I can still participate. I can still whatever. And it was around that time that I discovered that Steve Jobs was just a hippie who liked design. And I had idolized him forever. And I seriously thought he was a PhD level math guy. I didn't. No one told me. No one told me he was just a hippie who was probably high most of the time, who was a kind of an angry person, but like very design centric, right? Like if I had known that earlier, I maybe would have gotten into it earlier, but also maybe not. I maybe needed to get the comedy stuff out of my system. But yeah. Okay.
Well, that's a great insight. I feel like that happens a lot. It's like we always assume that everybody else has it figured out and they know what they're doing. I think that's like one like huge thing. Like nobody really knows what they're doing. Like they can pretend like they are and they can say that they do, but it's like you don't really know. Like you have no idea.
And then the big corporates too, they can be such a mess where like the expectation is like, oh, obviously they have everything down. But like I discovered recently that a big corporate here in Minneapolis, who I will not name, they don't get the results for their marketing like campaigns until 6 months later.
What?
This is one of the big ones, and they don't get their results until 6 months after their campaigns because they don't have systems. So like the creative teams, they don't hear back. So the creative teams at that company have no idea if an ad campaign is working or not. So like, and working at a startup, I think too, also helps you to see like that everyone's just figuring it out. And then working in corporate too, like I haven't really done the corporate thing, but I've talked to enough corporate people that I feel like I've kind of got the gist. And when I worked in advertising, when I worked in advertising, I was working with very corporate clients. So I was working with like MasterCard,
Yeah.
Microsoft, whatever. But yeah, like people don't have their shit together. They don't.
Yeah.
Like some people do. But like everybody always has some sort of a gap. Right? Like nobody has it 100% perfect. And if they do, they're lying.
Yeah.
Or they're like their parents had a lot of money.
Well, I also think there's a kind of like there are some people who have it all like technically have it all figured out, but there are also like people who are very boring people. They never like put themselves out there, and they're like, okay, well, I'm just going to do this the rest of my life. And like, I don't look down on anybody or like be like disparage, but like, isn't there a better way to do that? Especially if you're coming at a place from like you just don't want to do anything else because you want to have this perfect life. Like I understand there's fear, there's a lot of emotion, that like things that people struggle with, but they're like I think that those are others who are like, yeah, I have 100% it all figured out. Yeah, it's because you're making like stone wheels in 2026 or 2025 and no one really cares.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a lot of people who just like what's important in their life is not work. What's important in their life is family. And I think people, again, there are so many different possible ways to live your life. Like you could right now, if you really wanted to, even if you don't have any money, I mean, it would be really, really hard. Like, again, money solves a lot of problems, right? But like you could sell everything, move across the country, move across the world, get a total shit job somewhere, find a totally like crappy place to live and like completely start over. Like anybody can, like not everyone, there are obviously limitations, especially if you are somebody who has disabilities, or especially if you're like in a minority group and you're like not allowed somewhere, or like things are unsafe, right? But for the most part, like if you can hitchhike across the country, like, is that a good idea? Maybe not, but like that is a possibility that you could pursue if you really wanted to, right? And I think so many people get locked into experiencing life that like they see around them. One of the wildest things, if you look at like what causes kids to be successful, like if your kid is around rich kids and meets the rich parents, they're like 10 times more likely to be successful, even if their parents aren't successful. Because just being around those types of people, it allows you to see, this is how these people live. This is where these people work. This is what they do. And this is how they got there. Like you're able to like, those network effects can make a bigger result than like literally anything else. Which is crazy town. And I feel like I lived that because I like went to this crazy high school where all my friends went to Ivy League schools and I went to St. Olaf College, and I'm like hanging out here in Minneapolis being like, some of you are vaguely famous. And like if I had done a few things differently, like say, had I realized what late night television was, I maybe would be a comedian in LA, right? Like I might have had a completely different life. I may have actually gotten those TV jobs because I actually understood what late night television was. What's funny too is after that, I was like, what is Conan? And I like started researching what late night was, but I was too embarrassed to reach out and be like, hey, remember how I said I wasn't interested? I changed my mind. I didn't like bother doing it. I should have done that, but like it didn't occur to me. Well, it did occur to me. I like sat there like waffling on it for years and I didn't do anything, and it's so dumb. I could have like 2 years later been like, talking about Conan, any chance you know Colbert? I really like Colbert. Can we do you have friends? Could you just help? And it was funny because my parents didn't suggest that either. I don't know why they didn't suggest that. I think they thought maybe I knew to do that, and I was like, no, I'm too embarrassed. I couldn't possibly do that. I don't know. I don't know. And or I could have actually interned for my dad in college and then gotten a job at like a real fancy schmancy fund or like an investment bank and just like done that. Like there are a million. I could have listen. I could have been a ski bum. I could have moved out to like Colorado and just like taught ski lessons. There are like so many different ways that my life could have gone. And I think I chose the absolutely most bizarre one. I'm just like, I'm gonna try
craziest
anything.
one. Yes, the whole smorgasbord of
Like, I'm gonna move to Minnesota. Is that a good decision? I don't know. It's fine. I want my
well, you work,
I miss my college friends. I miss my relatives. I love winter. So I don't know.
well,
Like
you're
bananagrams.
great.
What else you got? What else you got? We're over time, aren't we? I can
No, we
keep
can
going.
keep
I can keep
going.
going.
All
Yeah.
right. So, who has been a positive influence in your life?
Um, I assume you mean when it comes to success. I
Yeah.
think in some ways, both my parents. Um, like my dad, because like seeing how my dad was able to something I remind myself about a lot, especially because he died a couple of years ago and he died around the time that he like completely changed his life. Is my dad's super crazy successful career that I always am like awed by started at my age right now. And that like gives me a lot of hope
Yeah.
because I'm like still so self-conscious where I'm like, I'm not doing a good job. I like
Mhm.
I made it. I've had very inconsistent income. I've been
Yeah.
doing cool things, but like I haven't figured out completely how to monetize it because I'm still not the best
Yeah.
at that. And like I had a startup that was cool, but I had to shut it down because real estate companies didn't want us to exist, and that was awkward.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and you know, so I've made a lot of big swings. Um, but I think my dad like helped illustrate that like things are possible, but also to
Mhm.
like even on the negative side of thing of being like, oh, well, he he eventually mellowed out, but
Mhm.
I think he kind of never got over the fact that like he had one home run and that was it. Right?
Yeah.
He
Uh-huh.
just kind of never got over it. And then he got one more job that he worked for a couple of years. And then he got laid off or whatever it was. And then he wasn't
Uh-huh.
able to get a job again, even though he really wanted to work more. And nobody would
Yeah.
hire him. And he was just kind of like, he was down for a while. And eventually he cheered up and just got over enthusiastic about sailing and lived his best life. And that was
Yeah.
amazing. But like it took him a
Yeah.
while to like get over the fact that like he wasn't going to hit the things that he really wanted to hit. And so that told me to like be grateful for like
Yeah.
what chances you're given, right? Like I'm very grateful
Mhm.
that I got to help sell Data Volo last year. How cool is that?
Yeah.
That was what,
Yeah.
right? But then also that wasn't a massive financial home run for me. It was more of like a
Mhm.
resume building home run, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like that right? So it was like, and so people are like, oh, so you're just cruising financially. And I'm like, well, it was for a bit, but now I'm not.
You're like,
It's
how much
like,
are you like cruising?
I'm like, no, that was more of like a resume builder,
Yeah.
than a financial builder. That money's gone. It's
Yeah.
bye. Right. So like be grateful for that stuff, but also to recognize that like you can't get stuck in that trap of like if the universe is changing around you, and you have no
Yeah.
control over it, like pivot, right? And my dad
Yeah.
eventually pivoted to sailing and he was able to retire and, you know, he had to cut back
Yeah.
a lot, but like he was
Mhm.
able to like go sailing and live his dream of sailing. And that was great, right?
That's great.
But my mom is so funny because I think again, she grew up in a wealthier environment. She was able to recognize immediately, this might be it. Austerity is key. We
Yeah.
must cut back.
Yeah.
And she was
Uh-huh.
just able to just like snap like that and just kind of like get it and be like, we need to pivot. And my dad did not make that same pivot and they ended up getting divorced and that was like a whole thing. So,
Yeah.
and like neither of them are perfect people. You
Mhm.
know, and neither of them I think like necessarily made all the right decisions, but it's very interesting to see that. Um I feel like I shouldn't just say my parents, though. I guess another successful role model I'm gonna say is this is gonna sound so cheesy. But my old boss, Michael Love at Love NYC. Um,
Yeah.
he, he's just a very cool guy. And, you know, he's not perfect either.
Mhm.
Um, and whatnot, but I really admire how he had, his career is so funny. So he was working at Sports Illustrated, but this is a bit of a privileged kid, but his dad also like kind of built like came from nothing and ended up becoming like the editor of Time magazine or something. And
Yeah.
so Michael ended up getting a job at like Sports Illustrated. It's just like total nepotism, right? But Michael was just very obviously very entrepreneurial and was really struggling in that environment. Like he was doing well. He like invented the football phone, which was like a thing back in the day. But then he was there and he was like, oh, like I want to change how we sell magazines. I have this new idea for how we can sell magazines and it's going to change everything. It's going to be amazing. Look at these numbers. Look at these projections. And they were like, no, we're not doing that. Go back and do your job. And he wouldn't let go. And so he was like, come on, come on. Let me do it. He got so annoying. They fired him.
Oh my goodness.
They were like, get out, man. Shut up. Yeah, this is corporate. Stop trying to rock the boat. This is ridiculous. And he was just like, F you. And he went and built it and then sold the company to Time magazine like 5 years later and made billions of dollars.
All right.
The most perfect FU of all time.
Yeah.
And so then, he ended up going to start another company. And then while starting that other company, his buddy was like, hey, can you help me build this really cool company? It's called Priceline.com. And he was like, sure. And so then he like helped them figure out how to build Priceline.com and then made a lot of money and lost a lot of money because of like stock market shenanigans. But like realized that he really enjoyed giving back and he really enjoyed working with young founders and figuring out how to help them be successful. And and so he ended up starting his VC, which was basically, a little bit of a, I have too much money, I don't know what to do with myself thing. But also he was very motivated to figure out like, I want to help young people figure out how to do, I want to help people figure out how to do this. And like, he's just a very genuine guy where he's just like, yeah, he wants to make more money, but like he does. Right. He's got one of the biggest houses in the Hamptons. He's right. But what really excites him is building and like helping people. And I think that's fabulous. And so like, I don't know. And he's just a good guy. I always enjoyed joking around with him. Eventually when he figured out I was funny and not bombing all my jokes.
It's great. What is one book that you think people should read?
Oh gosh, all my books are on my bookshelf right there. Okay, wait. I'm trying to look behind my lights. Range. There's a book called Range. I can't remember who it's by. But it's a kind of a light green, maybe is it teal? Like kind of like a seafoam green book with keys on it. It's called Range. That one is fantastic. And it's all about generalists and why generalists are going to thrive in the future because they're able to adapt and change to do all these different things. And as someone who has worked at the front desk and in comedy and in marketing and in sales and in product and in operations, I'm just like, yes, I love that book. The other book I like is a book called Designing Your Life, which was written by two Stanford professors. You know this one?
Yeah, I do.
But that combo, those two are like some of the most influential books for me. I just absolutely adore those. And then just for fun, because I was thinking about it the other day, because I was talking about Reddit a lot in the last 48 hours. There's a book called We Are the Nerds, which talks about what it was like building Reddit. It's a great book. It's also so funny. And the plot twist of Alexis Ohanian meeting Serena Williams and then marrying her is just like the funniest, craziest plot twist I've ever seen in my life. And I love it so much. And now he's a big advocate for women's sports. And I'm just like, he's so cool. I love that guy. He's like such a gem. So yeah, those are the books. So Range, Designing Your Life by those Stanford professors. That's like a light blue book. And then We Are the Nerds, which is like a white book with blue text and like some little graphic things on it.
What is the worst advice you have been given about success?
Yeah, I've had some bad stuff thrown at me. I try to block it out most of the time. I have a lot of people who tell me to not do things because it's bad ideas.
Uh-huh.
And then I do it anyway. It's fine. I think has there ever been anything really bad? Worst advice. Oh, one of my old bosses said that, and it's actually really interesting because, like, looking back, I now totally understand why he said it. There was this one guy who was kind of famous for being the asshole of the office. All right.
Yeah.
So we're gonna put that there.
Okay.
Cool guy. Total asshole. And like kind of a creep. Anyways. But also he's like, I get like conflicted feelings about this guy. He was always very nice to me. But there was a moment where I was like leaving the VC and it wasn't clear exactly what I was doing because it wasn't until like a few months later that I went to work for one of the portfolio companies. But I was
Yeah.
leaving to move back to Minnesota and it was just like complicated. And he was like, yeah, well, Carolyn, like, you're like a really good assistant. Like, you're not a leader. You're not like someone who's going to build things. You're like, you should like be a chief of staff somewhere and just be like a really good assistant.
Yeah.
And I was kind of shocked
Uh-huh.
that he would say that because this was a guy who I thought, oh, he's an asshole to everyone else, but like we're cool.
Yeah.
And I was really confused about why did he think that I was like not someone who would
Uh-huh.
do things?
Yeah.
Not that like being an assistant means you're not going to do things. I know so many people
Yeah.
who are like phenomenal chief of staffs, phenomenal assistants, like executive assistants who like are living their best lives. But that's not me. I'm also like not an organized person. So it was really, I was not his assistant. So like he didn't know that.
Yeah.
But like, he just knew that I was really helpful and was always going above and beyond. But then I realized, oh, when I was at, and this was at the same company, like Loeb, at that office, I was working on my own startup and I was interviewing all of these people in the office to learn how to build a startup. I was like, how do you do this? How do you do that? I was just like asking every single person I could meet. It was so great. It was like getting a baby MBA by just like going around the room and asking people a million questions. It was awesome. But I never asked him anything. I never told him I was building anything. And so for all he knew, I was on the operations team at this firm where I was an assistant, but I also was doing a lot of different things. I never pitched anything to him because I was waiting until it was perfect.
Yeah.
So he never saw me doing anything other than being a great assistant.
Yeah.
So he had no idea that like he knew I wanted to be a comedian, but like he had no idea that I was aspiring to be a founder. He had no idea that by that point I was interested in potentially starting my own VC fund one day. He had no idea that any of these things were interests of mine because I never told him.
Yeah.
And it was so funny because I had a million times where I could have told him. And same with the C-suite at Loeb. I never told them that that's what I wanted because I was waiting until the startup I was pitching was perfect and then I would do it.
Yeah.
Everyone in the office knew except for my my direct superior knew. But like I did not tell any of the C-suite executives in the office about these aspirations.
Yeah.
And so they could not help me. They had no idea. And I think some of them still don't know because they're not on LinkedIn. Right? So that I think was like a major failing and it led to terrible advice. But it was also because I didn't tell him. He didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
He just knew that I was really helpful.
Like, come on.
So like, yeah. So like, I think somebody who isn't an asshole wouldn't have said that. But also like, he didn't know.
That's a great, That's
so like a lot of times if you get bad advice, it's either because somebody has an issue that has nothing to do with you, right?
Yeah.
Or it's because they didn't know.
Yeah,
They
that's
didn't
great
have full
insight.
context, right?
Yeah,
I mean, like a lot of guys who are like, you just need to pick a lane and like, so you can get a job. Like, you just need to change your resume to be entirely about sales. Like,
yeah,
in some situations that makes sense. Like, if I want a really corporate job, that makes sense.
yeah,
But do I want a real corporate job? No. I mean,
yeah,
to be fair, I would love a break for like a couple of years and to just chill in like a really corporate
yeah.
job where people just tell me what to do and I'm like, okay. Um, but I don't think they want to hire me, so that's a different story.
No, I get what you're coming from. It's like it's you said it. It's just out of context, and they're very much of their own filter of like what do they think it's success is, and that's not necessarily what everyone else wants. It's like
Yeah.
I think that's the worst thing.
Yeah. And this guy, like, if I had told him 6 months prior, hey, by the way, I'm trying to build a startup, check out my mock-ups, check out my projections,
Yeah.
check out all this hard work I've been working on, he probably would have
Yeah.
been like, wow, I have a totally new perspective of Carolyn. And
Yeah.
he probably was in a position where he could have been like, I'm going to invest in your startup, or
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you who you need to meet to make this be successful. But instead, I just never
Yeah.
told him. And then I never saw
Yeah.
him again. Not again, a lot of my problems, not communicating, not telling people what I want, or asking a follow-up question like, can you tell me more about late night?
What is this late night you speak of?
Can you explain to me in more detail what your job is? Maybe can I shadow
Yeah.
you for a day so I can see what it's like? Instead of just being like,
No.
no.
No thanks. I'll pass.
All right, what else you got? Are we out of time?
All right. No, we have a few more questions if you have time.
I got time.
Are there any regrets that you have?
Late night.
Late night.
Conan. What's funny is something that's been a recurring thing, that's been a bit of a problem, is sometimes I like shoot myself on my own foot when I'm really depressed. I've had it like a few times in my career where I've been like, oh, I can't do anything anymore. And so like the comedy thing, I got really depressed. And part of that was, I think, being a comedian maybe wasn't the best environment for me, just because everyone's depressed and I need to be around happy people. And thank God entrepreneurs are happy people. They're just like oblivious, like insanely optimistic. I kind of like need that kind of energy in order to be a happy person. I've had many people tell me that I quit comedy too soon and I should have stuck with it. But also the expectation for comedy is that you work for free for 10 years before you get your first role. So like, I was like, is this something I really want to do? And another thing that I haven't mentioned that I think has been a big factor in like the success stuff as well, and like has also influenced, because I've taken a lot of big swings, and I took a lot of big swings early, right? Like I quit my job in advertising a year after I started it. Okay, like not 2 years, not 3, 1. All right, I was just I pieced out. And part of that is my sister Sarah is on the autism spectrum. She is an absolute super genius. She went to University of Connecticut. She had a BS in cellular molecular biology. She was a national merit scholar and like national Latin award winner, all this kind of stuff, right? She doesn't have a job. And she was able to like thrive in like a very structured school setting, but the rest of the world isn't quite like that. And she has had jobs and she's job hunting. So if anyone wants to hire Sarah, she's free, right? She's here in Minneapolis now. But she probably, even if she gets a job, she's probably not necessarily going to make enough money to like be able to support herself through her life. And the way the government is structured when it comes to people with disabilities, first of all, they keep trying to cut everything. So that's crazy. And like one of the craziest things is if you are somebody with a disability and you want to collect like Social Security or just like get, money from the government to exist, you are not allowed to have more than $2,000 in your bank account at any given time, or they will not pay you.
Wow.
So you basically legally cannot have savings.
Yeah.
Which is just, I think, one of the most horrible things about the United States.
Mhm.
There's a lot of bad things these days, but like that one, whew,
Yeah.
you're just setting people up for failure. And you're also making it so that they always are going to need money from the government instead of being able to do something like invest in a 401k and see those returns.
Yeah.
Right? It is a shame. It is a goddamn shame.
Yeah.
And so I have known for my whole life that I would have to financially support Sarah.
Yeah.
And when I was young, my parents were like, "I don't have enough money. It's not going to be an issue." Well, it's become an issue, right? So I have always known that I would need to not only be able to take care of myself and any family I decide to have, but also make sure that she's good. And also any bonus things that she might need, like if she does need to live in a group home or something like that, or an assisted living thing when she gets older, like it will be more expensive no matter what because of that.
Yeah.
Right. And so even though she's totally capable and could get a job if people are willing to give her a chance, just ludicrous. But then if she gets a job and she makes too much money, she can't take benefits. So so she doesn't take benefits because we want her to have her own money and to save money. So a whole other story.
Yeah.
And so I decided that if there were dreams I wanted to follow, if there were things I wanted to do, especially risky ones, that I wanted to do those as soon as possible. Because I knew that there would be a point where I may have to pivot and do something normal, boring, stable, whatever. And so having that kind of looming pressure was a bit of an incentivizer for me to be like, if I'm going to be a comedian, I need to make sure that I'm making money by a certain point so that I'm able to support Sarah. I need to be a comedian now.
Yeah.
Oh, I want to build my own startup. I need to make sure that I'm making enough money that at a certain point I'm going to have enough money. So if I want to be a startup founder, I need to be a startup founder now.
Yeah.
So everything in my life, other than the last couple of years have been weird because my dad died and like I've had some, hard moments, right? But most things in my life have been, we're doing this on speed mode. We are going all in. We are being as aggressive as possible and gonna get it done. So that I can get anything that I want to do out of my system and be responsible later. Which like in some ways is smart, and in some ways maybe it would have been better if I had a job offer that paid me like a crap ton of money right at the beginning and I was able to save and then put it in a bank account and then like let that appreciate like in a 401k or whatever, right? Like maybe that would have been better, but I also wasn't getting those types of opportunities fresh out of school. So like that wasn't necessarily super realistic. So it was like, okay, well, if that's not realistic, what is realistic? I'm going to make really aggressive swings in my 20s and early 30s. To like get everything set up. And so that's what I did. And I don't remember what the question was, but I hope it was a good answer.
Just are any regrets you have, which it sounds like you don't really have them.
Oh, right. Regrets.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the answer was I'm trying to live without regrets and I'm trying to live quickly. And like speed run that stuff. And then there's like the Conan stuff, but like the not communicating what I want to people who like could have helped me is definitely an issue. And that was an issue at Loeb. And there were a few advisors of mine who were like, oh, don't tell them that. Yeah, don't tell them yet. But like, there were multiple opportunities at that firm where like interns were pitching and my like itty bitty pitch deck was better than what they were pitching. And if I had just said, hey, can I pitch too? They probably would have let me. So like, that was probably a mistake. Yeah.
That's helpful. What are your thoughts on people on the idea that people should chase their passion?
I don't know if that's good advice for everybody.
Okay.
Um, so again, I had a very privileged upbringing. I also, in my 20s especially, you know, uh, if anything really terrible happened, I could have moved back in with my dad.
Yeah.
Right. And so in addition to feeling this pressure of I need to take care of Sarah someday, which is was a
Mhm.
real pressure and is still a real
Yeah,
pressure,
definitely. Yeah.
right? I also had I also knew that if I completely fell on my face, I
Mhm.
like had someone to ask for help. And that is something that not everybody
Yeah,
has.
definitely.
And also sometimes your passion is in an industry that sucks. So
Mhm.
comedy, like I mentioned earlier, comedy, I love comedy. I love writing. I love
Mhm.
performing. I love
Yeah.
doing it.
Yeah.
But culturally, it's not necessarily the best environment. There are
Yeah.
a lot of people who are really bad people who are trying to fake it till they make it, or who will take
Mhm.
advantage of you. Just like a lot
Yeah.
of when you're going into a glamorous industry, you get a
Uh-huh.
lot of bad characters,
Yeah.
right? And oh, can you hear my cat?
Mhm.
Okay, cool. And my cat's in the background somewhere. Also, the sun has like gone down and I'm in like a dark space, but I hope it looks cool. Anyways, um, what was I saying? Yeah, so like, and then also just like I was like starting to leave comedy in the middle of the Me Too era. And so
Okay.
like there were I literally had people who were telling me, "Oh, if you really want to be a comedian, you should dye your hair blonde and get a boob job." So,
Good, thanks. Great
and,
advice,
and not like
asshole.
one person, like multiple people
Yeah.
telling me that, right? And they were like, or, oh, you need to decide if you're like a character actor with a nerd who wears glasses or if you're a hottie. And you can go either direction, but you have to pick a lane. And so it was like weird stuff like that.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
and then and literally I had a friend who worked for the Weinstein Company, and she wasn't
Yeah.
she was at least physically safe for the most part, but she wasn't allowed
Yeah.
to use the bathroom, which was like a bizarre thing to not be
Yeah.
allowed to do at lunch. She was like not allowed to leave her desk at any time, and if she did, they yelled at her. It was like,
Wow.
whoa. So like
Yeah.
Hollywood, oof, it's toxic,
Yeah.
man. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
like and the majority like there's definitely like the nepo baby problem in Hollywood, but that's
Mhm.
true of any industry. It's not unique to Hollywood.
Mhm.
So like, again, the
Yeah.
finance kids in my school, their parents worked in finance, they worked in finance, right? Like this
Yeah.
happens in every industry. It's not unique to that. Like most people end up doing what their parents did. Or
Yeah.
something vaguely similar, right? Like even me,
Mhm.
like being in like startups and tech and like venture, I think is similar enough to what my parents were doing that like
Yeah.
it's kind of like okay, like that through line goes. Even though I wasn't a comedian, my dad told jokes all the time and was like a very
Yeah.
he like in all of his like financial reports would like write jokes. He had like these
Okay.
famously funny emails. Right?
Yeah.
So like there's still a ton of similarities, even though we didn't have the same careers at all, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, and also just because you're passionate about something doesn't mean that that's like what you want to do, because sometimes doing the thing can like make you less passionate about it.
Yeah.
And so what I tend to tell people, especially because I definitely needed to get the comedy thing out of my system. Like I had to like go in all in and like do it, right? Like
Yeah.
I wasn't gonna live with myself if I couldn't do that.
Mhm.
And I was willing to like, pay all the prices that meant for it.
Yeah.
And I'm proud that I still did it. But also like my strategy for comedy was I want to get a job at Disney. I want to get a job at SNL, but not Conan
Yeah.
apparently. And like I want to get like a classic television job
Yeah.
instead of oh, television is growing, but YouTube's growing faster.
Mhm.
Maybe I should build a YouTube channel in 2014 that is a
Yeah.
comedy channel,
Yeah.
right?
Uh-huh.
So what I tell people is to figure out, what are you interested in? Especially like, what
Mhm.
problems are you interested in?
Yeah.
What do you know what to do, or what do you like to do? Right?
Mhm.
And where is there growing opportunity? Don't go
Yeah.
chasing Hollywood, especially not right now when it's
Yeah.
literally collapsing. This is
Uh-huh.
maybe not a realistic goal, but you know what is a realistic goal right now? YouTube is skyrocketing.
Yeah.
I'm telling all my artists, and like with AI tools, I'm telling, because I do a lot of AI stuff. That's what I do.
Yeah.
I've been telling all my creative friends, hey, like, go build your own thing. Go do what you want to do. Like
Yeah.
don't let these gatekeepers gatekeep. Just do what you want to do. And instead of
Yeah.
like, I want to work at Disney as an animator, build your own animation studio. You can use
Yeah.
ChatGPT to get through the business stuff that you didn't want to
Yeah.
do in the past, that
Uh-huh.
you couldn't do in the past. Now you can just do that with ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And oh, you can't do this and this and this because you don't have enough people. Well, you can with some of these AI tools. Like, they're not completely evil. Like, you know,
Yeah.
there's pros and cons. You can use them to maybe do most of your backgrounds and you're focused on the characters, right? Like, there's so
Yeah.
many. I think, especially in the creative industry in general, this is like a topic I talk about a lot. Like, so many people get used to, I want to do things like in the prestigious old way of doing things, that they're missing the new opportunity.
Yeah.
And so, like, whether it's you want to be a comedian and you're going wild on TikTok and you're building your own thing, amazing. Or if it's like, oh, I'm really enthusiastic about tech and I really like how AI is helping people in the healthcare space. I'm going, and that space is growing. I'm going to try to use some of these skills that I've learned in AI and learn more about healthcare so I can go build in the healthcare space, right? Like, look
Yeah.
at what's going on in the world, okay?
Yeah.
And pay attention and what's going well and follow that.
Yeah.
And know that the world might change. And then
Mhm.
when it does, you may need to pivot, like my dad, right? Like, he couldn't
Yeah.
do his career anymore, right?
Uh-huh.
And granted, he was able to retire, but like, my mom wasn't able to do her career anymore. She pivoted to real estate, and then she was able to work
Yeah.
at like a financial firm. And so she had
Uh-huh.
two pretty big pivots, right?
Yeah.
So, like, look at where there's opportunities. Don't be afraid to reinvent yourself and pay attention. Just like, pay attention to
Yeah.
what's going on in the universe. You don't have to pay attention to it
Mhm.
24/7, but you can pay attention to it like at least a few days a week. Come on.
Yeah. For sure. No, that's great advice. So the last question, I know we talked about this kind of the highs and lows that you've experienced in your career.
Yeah.
Like, how do you stay grounded through all of that, and especially at the highest point? And I think even at the lowest points, maybe the grounded is not the best term for that, but
Mm.
maybe hopeful. With everything when you're at the lower points.
Well, it's pretty easy to stay grounded when my high points are also like not necessarily like, they're cool, but they're like, okay, let me break this down. Data Volo. I was there
Yeah.
for 4 months. I was the de facto head of marketing. I eh, the pitch, I redid all of the messaging, I redid all of the branding, I redid all of our pitch decks, everything. I just redid everything about the company so that we could better explain who we were, what we did, and how we could help
Yeah.
brands, right?
Mhm.
And what ended up happening was that Snowflake, who was already planning on partnering with us,
Yeah.
looked at our new materials and said, oh, look, it says here you guys do this and 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 this, right? We thought you only did the first thing.
Yeah.
Look, can we just acquire you? And so that's amazing, because it's like, wow, oh my
Yeah.
gosh, like, literally the work that I did
Mhm.
was one of the persuasive factors that led to the acquisition of Datavolo. That's
Yeah.
amazing. I'm learning this information while learning that I no longer have a job. That's a way to keep you grounded, man.
Yeah.
Also
Oh my goodness.
learning that I'm going to make like less than $20,000 as my equity, because I've only
Yeah.
been there for 4 months. So I'm sitting there being like, oh my God, I just did something really cool. Fuck, I'm screwed.
Like, all right, now, great.
Okay. Like a lot of people I think that I like made a ton of money from that. And like
Yeah,
I'm like, no, I did not.
no. Yeah,
I like did a really cool thing and like I get to brag for the rest of my life that I helped start up a Snowflake, a really big deal data company, and that when the news came out that company was sold, Snowflake stock price increased 34% in a day.
yeah.
And that was their biggest stock price increase at once ever. So I get to brag
Wow.
about that forever. That's amazing.
Yeah,
But holy crap, I was screwed.
yeah.
Mercado, we scaled 10,000% year over year in the first 3 months of the pandemic. Amazing. I was working on the phones with people screaming at me. Okay, because everybody was so scared and so panicked, and like the world is ending. We need our groceries. We're too scared to go outside. Like,
Yeah.
right, and so anything that went wrong wasn't just like a little bit wrong. Everything was heightened. And so everything was intense. But then also we're sitting there being like, we're saving the world. But like, I'm getting yelled at and told that I'm shit every day. So like, it was incredible. It was wild. But also like a lot of times when you have these big successful moments, there's something really wrong as well.
Yes. Okay, that's great. Really good insight.
Right. And so,
Yeah.
like, and a lot of times for, especially in Hollywood, and sorry that I keep going back to Hollywood, but it's an industry I know really well.
Yeah.
But you'll have these actors who are like at their peaks of their careers and their mental health is worse than it's ever been because behind the scenes is like totally fucked up. Right. Sorry, I'm squaring. Anyways, so like, yeah, I think, so how do I stay grounded? I have not had a success that allows me to be anything but grounded. That's how I do it. I have cool things that I've done. I have cool things that have happened to me. I've seen wild bananagrams stuff. I've taken risks. I've done all this stuff. But man, when you go out there and you put yourself out there and you're doing your best to try to do something cool, you get punched in the face a lot. And I have been punched in the face a lot. So eventually my goal is like, if I'm going to define success for myself, because I know it's not realistic to be one of my high school friends who's a literal pop star. It's not realistic that I'm going to be on Broadway. It is also not realistic that I'm going to be one of the top people at top investment banks in the world. Okay. Those are not realistic paths for me. Those are not things for me to aspire for. And even, being in the startup scene, I don't know that it's realistic for me to even aspire to be a billionaire. I'm not in the Bay Area. I don't really give a damn about all that crap. And so my definitions of success are two things. First, I have given myself a number where I have to shut up and stop complaining and never say like, oh, I need more, right? So I've given myself that number. I'm not going to say what that number is, but I will say it's the same number that my dad made in a day. So I've decided that if I ever hit that number, I can just chill the fuck out.
Yeah.
And we're just gonna call it, and I have to accept it. And I have to say, okay, I'm fine. And I have to stop comparing myself. Right.
Yeah.
The other thing, that number might be unrealistic as well. It might never happen. So the other definition of success, which is separate, is I want to have enough money where I am able to feel stable and physically safe. I have almost done that on occasion. I have not fully done it yet. And because I know we are going to have higher expenses in life with my sister, my goal numbers are higher than most people's. Right. But those are the two metrics that I operate on, which is I have to shut up if I reach a certain level. and I have my shut up, like zip up, you're fine, get
Yeah.
over it number, right? And then I have my like, I am safe, I am okay, everything's fine, chill the fuck out.
Yeah.
So those are two different metrics. I have not hit either of those yet. One of them is more attainable than the other, and the other one is my official get over yourself, girl. And I think that's a good place to leave it at. You know, like if I can do just as well as my dad that one time, I'm gonna be happy.
Mhm.
This is gonna be good. And hopefully I will save my money better than he did. And be able to like cruise if I need to, if I never hit anything bigger. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at.
Definitely. That's great. I think it's a great place to end it. So thank you so much, Carolyn, for being a guest on the podcast.
Thank you for having
loved
me.
every minute of it. Yeah. It's just very insightful, great stories.
Was this a full 2 hours or was this?
Yes, it was.
Hi, sorry, audiences. I hope this was like the best episode of your life. I hope you're like, who the heck is this alien?
Exactly.
Because I do feel like an alien here in Minnesota. I'm just like, I'm like, how do I explain my? I just feel like I'm from a different planet, and people are like, "Oh, you do this," and I'm like, I have a weird life, guys.
Like this really, it's fun. Adventurous.
And oh gosh, I remember I was on this panel once and they were like, "Oh, how are you such a successful founder?" And I'm like, I just got started. I don't have customers. We're not launched. Raised funding. Why are you telling this audience that I'm successful? Can we instead say, what are you doing in the hopes of becoming successful? I'm like, I'm like, no. So many people just like being like, oh, I'm a founder. And I'm like, because I I'm very visible on the internet. I make videos.
Yeah.
It's true. We know this, right? And then people are like, oh, you're successful. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I don't think I'm successful. I'm just somebody who like is very public about what I'm doing. That does not mean I'm successful. That just means I'm a chatterbox who won't shut up. That's what that means. My God. Okay.
I think that's great. Yeah. Awesome.
Okay. Awesome. And then you got to ask me if anyone wants to follow Carolyn. Where should they? And then I answer and I say,
all right. Thank you for the coaching. So if somebody wants to follow you, Carolyn, how can they connect with you?
Yeah, hi. So in case anybody missed it at the beginning, my name is Carolyn Holden. I make a lot of content on the internet, and I run a group in town here called Minnesota Women in AI, and I do some consulting shenanigans, but I talk all about AI creativity and the future of work. So a lot of the things I talked about here were not kind of related to that, but some of them were. So if you are interested in learning more about like the pros and cons and the nuances of AI and like how this is changing work, and how like people can adapt to it and figure out how to adjust, that's what I talk about. So I have a YouTube show, so you can find it by just Googling me. You have to Google my full name, Carolyn Swift Holden. If you just do Carolyn Holden, you're only going to get photos of Yasmin Bleeth on Baywatch. And yes, that's Swift like Taylor Swift. But the easiest way to follow me is honestly LinkedIn. I know, so lame. I do have a Substack, which is Swift Start Go. So that's another good place to follow me. And if you're a lady who's interested in AI or things like that, Minnesota Women AI, we have events all the time, including this morning. So thank you. And thank you so much, Adam, for having me. This was awesome. It was super fun.
Yeah, welcome. You're welcome. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your night.
You too. All right. Bye, everyone.
See ya. Bye.
Okay.